All right, Cassidy, it's that time.
What time is it?
It is time to talk about your favorite.
Oh, we're talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender?
We are talking about the Avatar the Last Airbender this week, but
Of
not just,
course.
but not just like a broad topic of Avatar the Last Airbender, but we're talking about all the people of Avatar the Last Airbender.
I mean, that's kind of just like what makes the show the show. So yeah, of course.
So, but yes, so today we will be talking about all of the characters that make up Avatar The Last Airbender, because obviously the show is not anything without them. We'll talk about all the main characters as well as some side characters that help kind of pull the story together um, and everything like that. So, here we go.
So we shall start. Do we start with just the obvious? Just
Yeah, we
start with
might as
let's
well.
start with Aang. You
Mm.
know, I almost literally my brain was telling me to say it wrong to piss people off. I
Ooh.
was literally I was literally about to be like, let's talk about Ong.
Ah!
My brain was like, do it. And I was like, no, you're not
I
going
want
to
to
do that. You're not going to piss people off.
I want to take the Q-tip that I clean the ears out with and jam it just a little bit further in every time you say that. Don't clean the Q-tip. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we'll start with Aang. Correct pronunciation and everything.
But yeah, so talking about Aang, we start out with his backstory. So obviously, boy in the iceberg, first episode, everything like that. Just basically how all the monks were like, "Yo, kid, you're the next Avatar," and he's like, I'm not into this." Homeboy runs away, gets frozen, 100-Year War, blah blah blah
I
blah.
mean, to be fair, he was 12. Like,
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure to put on a 12-year-old.
take any 12-year-old and just be like, hey, yo, you're gonna save the world.
Yeah,
Like, what's their reaction gonna be? Like, you're either gonna get some kid that's gonna be like overly like, yeah, of course I'm gonna save the world, I'm cool, or you're gonna get someone that's gonna be like, that's a little too much for me, bro. I
yeah,
think I'm just gonna go be a kid.
yeah. So and then so just just the whole like, excuse me. But yeah, I mean, if I was 12 years old and someone was like, hey, you're just at some point, not necessarily gonna like save the world, but you're gonna kind of help keep the balance of it. And I'm
Basically, like, you're a really important person, you know. You're that VIP human being. Well, Bender. Um, but yeah, I mean, like, I think like thinking back, right, when I was 12, um, I feel like I would have been like semi chill with it, but only because I read a lot and I was a Harry Potter nerd, so I would have been like, heck yeah, I'm gonna be cool. But then I think I would have been like, you know what, never mind the entire world. That's a bit too much. I think I would have also ran away if I'm being totally honest. Like,
yeah, could you imagine being an avatar like in real world in this time? I would have been like, "Ooh, that'd be a tough job."
I'm like,
I look,
sorry, and just like
I look at
ghost the
that.
entire world.
Sorry, I'm gonna pull an Aang.
I'm gonna be like the OG. I'm gonna like he's like the OG ghoster, right? Like he just ghosted an entire freaking nation. He was just like, you know what? I'm not about this life. Bye. Okay, but like to be fair, he also didn't mean to just like freeze himself in an iceberg. He just kind of freaked out and like avatar powers like kicked over or whatever. But either way, he's the original ghoster, right? Like he's the original person to just be like, peace.
Yeah, and of course he's like, I'm gonna ghost you guys, peace out, and then like they all died.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think probably like one of the hardest parts about like his story is just the fact that like I mean we know he's the last airbender. That's kind of like the name of the show. Um but I think for him like journey wise it's probably one of his like biggest like growing up points I think cuz like I mean obviously like as we've talked in previously like the show itself runs in such a short like actual time span as compared to like when it happened in the real world but like you know it was like over a summer like but I think that like that was one of those like big turning points for him and his journey is like when he kind of like it was like realization right like he obviously was told that like there are no airbenders left, that he was the last one. But like finding that out was probably one, a very like heart-wrenching time, but like also like one really big like
And it,
growth.
yeah, and honestly, it was like a turning point, with not just his story, but the whole like Avatar timeline as well. Because he went from, when Katara and Sokka found him, he was like this fun-loving kid. He thought everything was a joke. He was supposed to have fun with everything. And then when he found that out and he realized, oh crap, he grew up very quickly when he realized the like the consequences of his actions. But like the universe has a plan for everything, so not only was it a turning point with the story, but he grew up very quickly from that point. He got very serious, and that's where we see a lot of his character development come from that point on, you know.
Well, yeah, and I think with that too, a good like he grew up, but I think one of the best things is he never really lost that like fun-loving like character like trait that he had, right? So like he grew up and he realized like this is something like I have to do. Like this is something that's like, like I think he did like take a lot of that like internally of like, the world like all of the airbenders are dead because of him, but like if you think about it like in all honesty, like him running away and then freezing himself saved himself, right? Because he would have 100% been dead.
Yeah,
Like he would have been dead with them.
yeah, because they didn't know what the Fire Nation was planning at that time. Like, Kid would have been a sitting duck. But the fact that he's like, I'm gonna ghost you, but psych, I'm back, kind of thing.
But also like this brings out a really interesting thing that I don't know if I've ever really like voiced or thought about before, is like, so I understand like, right, the Fire Nation was like, we got to take out the Avatar, we're just going to kill all of like the airbenders. Where was the next choice to just kill all the waterbenders? Because like the Avatar reincarnates, like they know that. So like were they just gonna like kill everybody? Because like what happens when it becomes a firebender, right? I doubt that firebender is gonna be able to just go along with like the whole we're gonna rule the world as firebenders like mentality.
You have a really good point because that's eventually that's I so from what they were going to do was after they got rid of all of the airbenders because they didn't know which one. They knew that it was going to be a waterbender, and for some reason they knew the northern water side. It was going to be from the northern water side, or is it southern? Oh, I got confused for a second.
I don't know actually.
Oh god, I feel
I
like
don't know if you would be able to know that though. Like I
yeah,
don't think that like that knowledge would exist, because I don't think that like it's picked in that specific way, because like I think with the water,
I think it's just
nation.
yeah, I think they're
Well, 'cause, like, yeah, but, like, with the water, like, being separate, like, they're the only real, like, nation that's separate. I don't think that it, like, the Avatar, like, cycles in the sense of, like, "Oh, well, last time we had a waterbender in the northern water tribes, like, this time we're gonna do it in, like, the southern." I think it's just
yeah, I'm not too sure. We'd have to if anybody knows, let us know down below, or we'll research that as well. But the thing is that they specifically were just going. That's why they went to the water tribe and was like, "Yo, we're gonna kill the last waterbender that you have." That's why Katara's mom was like, "No, it's me." Like, and then they, no questions asked, just killed it, not realizing, sorry that it's actually my daughter. Um, so I think they were just going to like pinpoint, and honestly, and you've got a good point. They would have to do this for all of eternity. They would literally have to like
what was the thought process behind that, right? Like,
Fire Nation.
I
They're
mean,
not all that smart.
well, I mean, we've talked about it, right? Like, Sozin's not like the smartest guy in the world, but it's like, what was that thought process, right? Like, oh, like we're just going to murder, like, but okay, so they murdered all of the air like nomads, right? But they just captured all of the waterbenders, like what was like why couldn't they do that with air? Like what was the difference? Like why did they just decide genocide? And then you're like, you know what, we can't just like kill another entire like group of people. We're gonna be good guys and we're just gonna like put them in prison.
I wonder, like, with storyline, put aside, we're gonna put away the actual storyline, but I'm just very curious, is if the Fire Nation thought of the Air Nation as a threat, that they could take care of the Water Nation and the Earth Nation, but for some reason, the air nomads, despite their like peaceful way of living in life, could do so much damage. Like they could literally take the breath out of your lungs and suffocate you. They can like just it for some reason to me it may have been like a we see them as a threat. Again, not the smartest decision to make, but it's a thought. It could be a thought.
Yeah, it's like I mean, but like we've talked before, but I still believe that like air or water benders are pretty damn OP. But I guess like they didn't know that blood bending could
Yeah,
exist.
because I mean,
Uh,
yeah, there weren't a whole
but
lot of
like
bloodbenders.
it just I guess like it to me it doesn't really like track. Like I get it, like storyline. You know, you have to kill them all because otherwise, like what is there to fight for? You know,
Yeah,
like he could just like go back to being like part of the air nomads. But like you know what I mean like it's weird that like they didn't just like they just killed all the air nomads. Like were there not any non-benders in like the air nation? Like was it just all benders that lived there? Like what happened when you were born and you were a non-bender? Because they left the non-benders alone in the water tribe.
yeah,
Like it's just little things, right? Like you know, I understand. Like I fully get that like this was 100% like storyline driven choice
yeah.
that like they had to like kill all of the airbenders off, but like at the same time like
Like as a fan, it begs the question,
well
like
yeah,
what
because it's
would
just
have happened? Like what again? What was the thought process of you doing this?
because like they killed all the airbenders and what and they thought that they killed like the avatar because they were like looking for you know the waterbender like to be like which is your avatar like which is your like last waterbender because that's the avatar because he'd be like 100 years old, right? So it's like why didn't they just like instantly switch over to like doing that? Like what like why'd they wait 100 years to do that? Like
I have no idea.
why not wait another 12 years and kill a child? I'm just saying. Like, but also like it really does one question that I didn't realize until I was saying this is were there any non-benders that lived in like the air like
Yeah,
temples?
there had to have been because if you think about it, I'm gonna jump over to Korra for a second. Boomy, for example,
Well, yeah,
he was
but like that's Legend of Korra though, right? So like that's after they've like rebuilt like the air temples, like rebuilt like a like foundation for this, right? But
But I
like
would think that if there's non-benders within the Water Tribe, the Earth Kingdom, the Fire Nation, I would assume that there would be non-benders within the Air Nomad, and they just learn the way of like being a monk
why
and everything.
kill them? Why kill them all? Like
No, I can't answer that for you, Cassidy.
look,
We're going to get to a point where we're gonna drive you insane. I think we're supposed to be talking about Aang.
I know, but like this just begs the question. Well, I guess like because it still like ties into Aang with his storyline, right? Because like we know he's the last Airbender, but was he the last Air Nomad? Like you know what I mean? Like what happened to if they did leave any alive that were non-benders? What happened to them? Like
They,
obviously like, they weren't going to still live there because you kind of have to be able to fly in some way, shape, or form to like get to
they
like
could have
their
also like
temples,
transitioned to be like a normal person and not,
probably in like the Earth
they
Kingdom.
yeah, they got scared of the Fire Nation and they were like, "Hey, we're just gonna like cut ties with all
Well,
of this."
that's true because I guess like if you think about it, by like the time like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like Aang's like his 100 years later, anyone who was still alive at that point was either like super duper old or like dead and had children, and probably didn't mention that they were from the air nomads.
Yeah,
Sorry, that just like brought another question though, because we've talked about non-benders having like bender children or eventually having like bender powers. Is if that theory holds, right? Say like you know like non-benders of the air nomads like went to like the Earth Kingdom to like Bossing Say because that's like where everyone went. Um, like there could technically be airbenders that didn't come from the Avatar. that we just don't know about.
Yeah.
That would be a really interesting thing to like delve into, like story wise though, like with like the Avatar Studios, because I'd be like, if that is like, because like there's nothing to say that they didn't, right? They just said that Aang's the last Airbender. They didn't say he was the last of like the last like air nomad. They're just like, oh, they killed everyone, but like they don't know if they killed all of like the non-benders.
Yeah. But I think the thing is that anybody can learn the way of becoming an air nomad. You know, so whether you were born in the air nomad nation, um, and was a non-bender, you still learn the way. Anybody can learn the way. It's a
Well,
very
no, but I'm not saying like, well, yeah, like you can learn the way, but it doesn't mean that you're a bender.
yeah.
So that's what I'm saying though, is like there could technically be airbenders out there that like
And maybe they just went into hiding because they were scared, and then they just stuck to their guns and just never.
want more airbenders.
Maybe with all the new studio stuff. But anyway, so yeah, like so Aang's story again, he grew up very quickly, and the fact that Homeboy grew hair, like I saw him with hair, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, you've been asleep for like 3 weeks, your hair grow real fast, boy.
Seriously, like
Which begs the question,
you
how
know,
often do you have to shave your head?
like suspension of disbelief. Obviously, when you're talking about a show like a children's show too, because it's like we said, like it happened through a summer, which is like like he grew hair in 3 weeks. But it's like you'd grow stubble. I just don't think you'd grow hair that long.
Yeah,
Because isn't like the average like a centimeter a month or something is like the average that like humans grow hair?
I have no idea.
But that's average. Like that's not like a oh everyone does it. Like some people grow less, some people grow more. So he could just be the freak of nature who grows hair really fast.
Every morning he gets up and he's just like,
Well, I mean that
oh, my
actually we
favorite
know
head.
he does that, but we know he does that. We know that he shaves his head because is it the Tales of Bossing say when like it's the individual storylines and you see him shaving his head but there's no hair on it. So we know that he shaves his head every day. So it is very possible he's just a freak of nature that grows hair really fast.
Could be. So yeah, but yeah. So do you have any other thoughts on Aang's story?
No, I mean, like I think that we've hit pretty much a good chunk of it. Like I think the biggest thing for him is like his growth arc, right? Of like in 3 months starting as like a literal child that's 12 years old, so then someone having like the mentality of like a 20-year-old,
Yeah,
even more than a 20-year-old. But I mean, like it's also like trauma makes you like grow faster too, anyways, mentally. So
I can
he went through
relate
a lot
so
of
much. I can relate so much to that. It's a hard thing to think about, but yeah, I mean, it obviously helps propel you to be an adult and a better person a lot faster, but also it does come at a price. Um, so, but yeah, I mean, everybody knows Aang's story, stuff like that. Basically, he was a child, acted like one, realized, boom, changed. Here we go. By the end of it, we are like a very responsible, independent person, but we also know about like relationships and how to make those hard choices, and just seeing everything he's had to go through, like even just to enter the Avatar state too. Like he had to make these choices and make the choices to not kill, Firelord. So not to kill Ozai. So it's one of those, things where he's he's grown up enough to uh make those decisions. So I think overall a very very good character that we can all look up to and learn from. Um, but we also still have to hold on to some hope. All the hope. Just some hope. You like some hope?
You said
Uh,
that it just made me think of like
hope.
the episode of the you know what I'm talking about. Oh my god, what the frick were they called? Yes, Sam Riley players
Ah,
have to have a hope.
so
But like they're not wrong, right? So like Katara is definitely that like character that's supposed to embody that hope, right? Like she is very like I would say like idealistic and like very like optimistic on her output, like with like everything. She was kind of like that, like the mother character. She was
yeah,
motherly. She like took care of everyone, but she was also kind of like the like Like, we got this. Like, we have this. Like, I mean, like, she didn't really. I don't know. Like, I'd have to go back and look and like actually like pay attention if she like actually said something about being like about hope. But like, definitely like a lot of her themes and things that she would talk about with the group and stuff, like definitely centered around like having hope and like
Yeah.
you know being hopeful
Basically,
for everything.
basically keeping everybody's spirits up because Aang would get into a funk, Sokka would get into a funk, Toph would get like she plays a very motherly role, and she takes that from her mother because her mother protected her and made the sacrifice to sacrifice herself to save her family. So then Katara then feels this responsibility now to have that motherly feeling to protect like her younger brother, and now she's helped found the Avatar, and now she feels that it's her destiny, that like this is it. I have to keep this kid going, and by the end of it, they're together and they got kids. Oh my God. So yeah, so after losing her mother, she then becomes this motherly role and says you just it's like a drinking game. Every time she says the word hope, you take a shot.
Okay,
Um,
but I really need to know, does she say hope that much, or is it just because like those are like the themes? Like now I really want to play a drinking game watching Avatar The Last Airbender, and if Katara ever says hope, I take a shot.
well, I'm gonna you keep talking. I'm gonna look something up real quick.
You're gonna look it up. I mean, but I think like one of the best things about her character is like she does have growth, right? I mean, like she doesn't have like I don't think anyone has near as much growth as like Aang and Zuko, like which we'll talk about later because like obviously Zuko has probably the biggest like character arc, other than like Aang being like the main character. But like I definitely think that she has a lot of like growth that she does in not just like always being like the hopeful person, but like one of my as I've like talked about before, my least favorite episodes, and I put quotes around it, is like, when she would like went to go try and like kill the guy who like killed her mother, which like I totally get. But like she definitely grew, I think, from that like experience with because like she that was like kind of like her like last little bit of like things that she held onto was losing her mother, which kind of gave her that like hope and like spirit like outlook on life. But I think that like with that she grew a lot just because like I love Katara. She's probably like I'd be friends with her.
Oh yeah,
But
I'd be friends with her. She's that person, um, that you need in your life. So hold on, let me see.
like with her too, I think that like it gets lost a lot, and like it happens a lot too in real life, is like she is that motherly character, but like the question always begs like, well, then who's taking care of her, right? And I think that that's one of like the things that episode brings to light with her character, is like she was harboring all of this like ill will and hate towards the Southern Raiders, like, and like her mother's killer, that she had to like get through. She had to, because she didn't have anyone else to kind of like help her through it, until like Zuko was there to be like, hey, like I could help you, but like was kind of there like letting her do her thing, but also was like, do you really like want to do this, like do you really want to be like a murderer?
Yeah,
And she was able to kind of like have someone to help her out that way.
yeah. So I mean, like, and she's not a perfect person, and none of us really are. But yeah, you do make a good point that it all, and I mean, it happens to me, and it happens in real life too. Is that you can push your friends to be the best person they can be. You could be their hope in life, but every once in a while you'll slip up and you'll lose that hope, and you'll lose your way, and then all the hope that you've given all your friends does come back. So as much as we joke about Katara saying hope, and I don't know how many times she says it, but somebody's got a video out there. It says Katara's hope for 2 minutes straight. I don't know how many times, but somebody's compiled every time she says the word hope and has compiled it in a 2-minute video.
Okay, but if you think about it, right, unless it's just her saying the word hope, if it's like full sentences of her using the word hope in a sentence,
Yeah.
2 minutes is actually not a lot.
Yeah, it's not. It actually is her like saying full sentences. I had it.
Okay, fun drinking game though. Restart this episode and drink every time we say hope.
That's
Okay,
why
don't do that.
we
Don't do that.
don't do that.
Don't do that. You might die.
That's bad.
But like,
Don't do that.
I feel like we've said hope in this episode alone more times than she has probably said in the entire series.
Or just take a drink every time we get off topic. You'd be wasted.
I mean, that's
You'd be
like, I don't, you'd be wasted, but I don't think you would die from it. So like, that's a better drinking game. I think you could just have that as a drinking game as a whole throughout our entire series. So
Yeah.
um
But yeah, no. Again, you know, and then I was much as Katara talks about her mother, but again, it stems from that trauma of losing her mother. You know, I lost my dad. We're going on what 3 years now? Oh my god. But I tell stories about him all the time. You know, so as much as people poke fun at it, it's like a way to keep their memory alive. Because like these people didn't know her mother, so she's trying to educate, but like this is my mother. You kind of know my mother through me. It's kind of what
yeah.
I do with like my dad. So no, but Katara is also again that motherly character and kind of helped push everybody forward. Katara herself, I believe, didn't have as much as a growth arc as the rest of the characters did, but she was that pivotal character that pushed everybody to be way better than what they were. And then she had like her few moments that kind of like pushed her forward as well. So she didn't have as much growth as the rest of the characters, but without her, the rest of the everybody else would not have pushed as far and grown as much.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I definitely believe in that just because like I said like you know that was kind of her role. Like she kind of helped everyone through like all of their funks because like as you had mentioned before, like Aang would get into his funk, like Toph would get into her funk, Sokka would get into his funk. Like she was there to help lift them back up and give them that hope that they like lost. Because most of the time when they were getting into a funk, especially with Aang, is like because they lost that hope that they were gonna be able to do what they were gonna do. Because I mean, like think about it, they're a group of fucking kids. Like the oldest one in the group was Sokka at what's 16, 15?
He was 15.
15, yeah, because he's like a year younger than Zuko.
I
So yeah,
think
the oldest one in the
Sokka was younger. My bad.
yeah, but like so like if you think about it, like they're children. Like they're children. Like I think about it now and I think about like, oh yeah, like oh when I was that age I would have been able to do things like that. But then I like actually interact with like kids their age and I'm like, you know what? Like actually no. And so like I think Katara really filled that role of making it more realistic, right? Like because like you could have just done it without her and just not had any episodes where they were just like, "Oh, we're like not going to do it. I don't know how we're going to do it." Like, you know, but that made it so much more real and so much more like relatable, I think, for the audience
And
is having those moments.
you needed that female character in there. You can't just like
Yeah.
have it all the guys and whatnot. So yeah, Toph is in there, but you know she's kind of one of the guys. But you
Yeah.
need that like that female presence in there, and Katara brought that most.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, but with moving forward, we go to one of my favorites. I love him so much, and probably have the best. Well, I mean, I probably the second best. I'm gonna change that. The second best character development and growth. Um, is my boy Sokka. I love him.
Wait, so you said second best.
I did say second best. I
Is your first best someone we haven't talked about
Yes,
yet?
we haven't talked about him.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's why I stopped and I paused and thought about it. I was like, wait a minute.
I was gonna be like, I feel like you're gonna anger a lot of people.
No, he's a very close second. A very close
Oh, I mean,
second.
like, yeah, 100%. And I think we've talked a lot, I think, in depth previously about like Sokka and his like growth and like what he's added to the show, just as purely being like a non-bender, being able to keep up with benders. But like that was something that he had to grow to, right? Like, because I mean, like, yes, we have like when we get into Legend of Korra, like we'll talk about like Asami being a non-bender, but like Sokka was kind of that first, right? Like, because back in Avatar: The Last Airbender, like in Aang's universe or like his time, like non-benders really didn't do much. Like,
Yeah.
they let pretty much all of like the benders fight the wars and do all the things, and so Sokka was kind of that first to like be part of this group and then realize that like go through that period of like what am I even like adding to it. Like he was like I have my boomerang, I like taught like a tiny child army, but like he was able to kind of like come through it with his like sword and
Yeah,
you know
he
all of that.
brings to life how powerful non-benders really are. You know, not just physically, but mentally. And I know we touched on that last episode, but I believe he's the one that paved the way for non-benders making mistakes in the game. Um,
Oh, 100%.
yeah. So, and then for him to have this growth as well of him doing that, but if you just start out at the beginning, he was very very sexist. He was a very very
Oh,
sexist man.
100%.
Like at first I couldn't stand the guy, you know, because he was like, "Step aside, ladies. I've got this." But then I think this is all where it started when they met the Kyoshi Warriors, and he was like, "Yo, I've been a massive like bad word this whole time."
I'll say it. I'll say the word. I cuss. I'm the
But he's been
yeah.
a
I
villain.
was gonna say. I was like, I said the F word
I'm
earlier.
a
You can.
horrible person this whole time. Oh my god! Like, cause here he meets Suki, who's a non-bender as well, but is far beyond more powerful than he is at this point. And he's like, wait a minute, I'm not as good as I seem. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of like eating your own dignity, you know, to take that in and move on from that, you know. So that's honestly where it started with the Kyoshi Warriors, and then he goes into many other like Sokka arcs to push him to be my second best.
Oh, definitely. And I think that like with Sokka too, like one of the biggest things, like with his growth with like through like the Kyoshi Warriors and like you know becoming like a master like swordsman, things like that. Like his growth, and I think you are pretty spot on with like being one of the best. Because like yeah, if you were to watch an episode one and compare it to just like Sokka in like any episode in like season, you know, 3, like it's a vast difference, but it's also such a subtle, I think, change. Like yes, you see a fairly large change when he like hits like with the Kyoshi Warriors, but like it's super, I think, subtle and realistic the way that like his progression kind of progressed from there. Because like you know once he like had you know his interaction with Kyoshi Warriors, he started like going, you know, like I want to actually like do something with this. Like I want to be able to like help out more, and wasn't necessarily voiced, but it was like seen through like his actions and being able to help rather than just being like a comic relief guy in the background making like sexist comments.
Yeah. So with that, and then so the Kyoshi Warriors was the first one, and then you get to the point where he becomes a master swordsman. From what he doesn't realize is a member of the White Lotus. So for him to again suck up his pride and realize he's not the best, and he makes his space sword. It's a sword made out of space rocks. It's great.
Space Rock.
Space sword. But yeah, that's like another pivotal turning point. He's taken everything he's learned so far. Again, is such a big person to be able to swallow his pride and then push through like just any adversity. Um, and then of course it all being there with his trusty boomerang because he's got a lot of weapons. He's got his club, he's got the space sword, he's got his boomerang. Fantastic.
He's got his mind, his intellect. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
That's right. I say boomerang because I want to make a quick reference here. It's from a show called The Dragon Prince. If you have not seen The Dragon Prince yet, it is a show made by the same creators of Avatar the Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. If you haven't seen it, this is a small like just funny spoiler. It doesn't spoil the show, but it's something that they touch on. So the main character in The Dragon Prince is actually voiced by Jack DeSena, who voices Sokka. So about halfway through the show, they find this object, and his character Callum goes up to this object and he goes, "Something seems familiar." And this boy then just goes, "Boomerang?" And then it cuts to something else. Like the fact that these creators with the same voice actor brought like cross shows, brought this a funny Easter egg. I thought it was hysterical. If you watch the show, you know what I'm talking about. If not, it's a good show. You need to watch it. But yeah, just like it was so great, and it was unexpected. I watched it when I watched it in real time. It was just like I died. I had to pause. I was laughing so hard, and my roommates were like, "Are you okay? What is happening?" I was
And
like,
you're like, you don't understand.
"I don't understand," even though some of them know what Avatar the Last Airbender is. So yeah,
Yeah, but they don't understand how funny it is.
yeah,
Like it's just it's funnier, I think, if you're like super crazy into things like we are, just
yeah.
a little obsessive.
We're a jack of all trades, but a master of none. At least that's what I am. But you know what I am a master of?
What?
My girl Toph. Hello, it me. Literally, Toph is me. I just don't have black hair. I just have dark charcoal gray
And
hair.
you're not blind.
I'm not blind. Well, I mean, I'm wearing glasses, but I'm not blind.
I was gonna say, I was like, if you're blind, you've been lying to me for a
No,
very long
it's
time.
just so like I can read a computer screen better.
I
This is
mean,
like
but
my
like you're
lowest
not like,
prescription.
yeah, I was like, you're not blind. You're
Help me to not get headaches so much. But yeah, anyway, Toph, like she is my girl. I think she amongst all of them faces probably some in the beginning faces most of the adversities and has just learned to overcome them a lot better. And she's devoid of most emotion until she meets our gang. But yeah, so I mean, and when we meet her, she is the blind bandit. That's how we come upon her, and Aang needs a earthbending teacher. There's somebody who waits and listens, and boom, who what better than the blind bandit? Not the
yeah.
folder, but the blind bandit.
The boulder thinks that is dumb.
Well, the boulder. Oh my god, there's so many
um,
there's so many boulders.
I think with Choff, I think she's probably out of all the main characters. Okay, so like excluding any of like the side characters, but I do think that like out of all of the main characters, she probably has the least amount of like growth necessary,
Yeah,
and like that also growth that happens, right? Because like for Toph, like she comes into it pretty solid in who she is. And who she is a pretty solid character to begin with, but I think that it's also necessary, right? Like you don't need every single character that you make to go through some big change, right? Like she has her little moments, right? She has moments of like self-doubt, things like that, but like so does everybody else. But it also goes to like show like you don't have to like you don't have to come out of anything a different person. You can go into it being a badass and come out still being a badass.
yeah. She was just again. So she up until the time she meets the gang, that was her growth. And then once she meets the gang, she really doesn't grow anymore. And I was honestly the only thing that she did, which was pretty big, was just invent metal bending, and that's
Yeah, I was like, but I would say like right, she doesn't like grow character wise,
yeah,
story arc like we're talking about all the other characters. She does grow in her badassery and like
yeah,
inventing metal bending and realizing like this is a thing. But right, but that's not like an emotional growth that like we've pretty much been like chatting about with like the rest of these characters. But like again, like I think that's also pretty necessary that like to show you like you don't have to like continue well, I mean like yes you should always continue growing, but like you don't have to like grow at the same rate that everyone else is. Like you don't have to come out of it completely changed like everyone else did, right? Because like I mean, obviously Toph grows and like becomes other like does other things, has her own emotional growth, things like that with like when she gets older, but like in the course of the show, I think that she really just helps add that like a badass female character cuz like
yeah. Because that's what she adds. We go back to Katara, who did have character growth, but she was again the motherly figure. Now we need like a badass female to kind of tie it all together.
the bam.
Yeah, so and she just was like, I ain't about this royalty life. I'm gonna learn from some badger moles. I obviously reconciled with her parents. Eventually. So,
Well,
but
with Toph too, though, I think one of the really cool things about her is the fact that like she shows that like all like girls don't have to grow up to want to be princesses, right? Because like us growing up, that's like pretty much what was marketed to us. Like you're gonna grow up and you want to be like a pretty princess, and like that's like all the marketing that was like given to us as kids. Whereas like with Toph, like a little girl could watch her and just be like, I don't want to be a princess. I want to be a badass who like fights bad guys, right? Like
Like it's
having that role model is so great.
yeah. So honestly, like straight up, Cassidy, what you just said was you and me. Like straight up you and me. And here's the thing: everybody kept trying to throw like the girly stuff at me, and I'm that kind of person. Well, if you force me to try to like this, I'm immediately not going to like it. I kept forced to like wear the flowery prints and like the girly clothes, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I enjoyed being comfortable, but in this day and age, is that you are the Katara of the group and I am the top. So you're the pretty girly girl. If you love the makeup, you got to do it before every show. Even though half the people probably don't even watch this, but Cassie
It's
is talking. It's okay, but you do your makeup, you do the hair. You're all about like dressing up, this and that. I could care less. I just came in from working from the garage. I'm covered in sawdust still. I'm dirty. I have a job that gets me dirty and sweaty every single day. I'm the badass of the
that
group.
sounds so wrong, Miranda.
I'm a fireworks technician. If anybody wants to know, I'm a fireworks technician, so I'm just covered in like black soot every day when I get off.
Yeah, that sounds better.
Literally, why did you go there? That was unnecessary, ma'am. Excuse you.
Do we
Ex-
do we want to revisit who I used to cosplay for you? That is why.
yeah. Yeah,
It's
well,
not my fault. You
we've got
did this to me.
we've got a lot of cosplay stories, but we're gonna save that for season 2. So if you want to know about Cassidy's cosplay adventures that I've made her do, stick around for season 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like honestly, it's me and you. You're the Katara. You love the girly stuff, being there for everybody, and I'm just the badass person that like
So we just
get the
need to
hell out of
find
here.
our Aang and Sokka and Zuko, and we've like completed our group.
Pretty much, pretty much. Um,
Okay, it's
so yeah,
fine. It's
and then
cool.
like again going back, she learned all of her bending from Badger Moles, and all the way up to creating metal bending. And honestly, that was a pivotal point as well for her because in the final battle, had she not known metal bending, they wouldn't have been able to get rid of all the hot air balloon and stuff. Words are hard.
That's true. This is very true. Yeah, I forgot about that. Well, and I think it's also, I think it's really funny, and I think it's like not, I think it's too downplayed, is the fact that she like learned metal bending and no one else knew it. So like there are times that she's like metal bending or doing things with metal, and like I feel like people don't react enough to it, like the
Yeah,
characters and stuff. Cause like there is the episode that like she was like attacking like the Fire Nation like in their little like, I think it was in like the hot air balloons, but like she covers herself in metal, and the firebender's just like, oh shit, what's this? Like if that was me, right? If I was a firebender and I did not know that metal bending exists, I'd be like, what the fuck kind of god just came in here?
right. I mean,
like I would just be like, I would be down on my knees going, please don't kill me, God. Like if you think about it, right? Think about it like logically. Metal bending doesn't exist
it does.
before Toph. Like no one in their right mind ever thought to think that like earth particles would exist anywhere other than earth, right? And so like she's the first person to realize this, probably because she's blind and can see with her feet and can see it. But like no one just like, everyone just like was like, oh cool, you metal bended now, cool, like you made a new bending style. It's like no, no, no. I would have been like, what kind of god just walked this earth?
Yeah, and if you think about it, going into the comics, if you've read the comics, that even people in the comics weren't surprised about it. She's like, "Hey, I'm looking for metal benders. You got the stuff, kid." And like, "What? Metal what?" Even when they discover metal bending, it's still like a kind of thing.
I feel like it's so downplayed. Like metal bending as a whole is so downplayed, and I feel like it was definitely overlooked. And it's like such a cool thing, right? And like it's something that they literally had to in Legend of Korra like figure out a way around, right? They had to make a very pure metal that metal benders couldn't bend. Like that's how like powerful this is, but they just downplayed like everyone's reaction to it.
Yeah,
I think that that they should have been a little more like confused and or in awe of metal bending
You know
powers.
what you think of is the Pikachu meme with metal benders. I,
Okay, but like everyone should have been making the shocked Pikachu face. I'm just saying this right now.
I love it.
Everyone should
I love the
have.
shock Pikachu face. I use it on a daily basis. But yeah, so moving along because we are running out of time here. And the on
Time.
the time is irrelevant. Is then to my again my number one. I know I said Sokka was my number two on character development and growth, but Homeboy is my number one, and that has to be our boy Zuko. So we're
Oh,
including the
100%.
gang. Hello,
If
Zuko.
he gets part of the gang, like the GAANG gang. But I feel like if he's not your number one for like character growth,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to hear your argument for who you think is number one, because Zuko has the most growth out of everyone, not just because he switches from like evil to like good, like he switches sides, but because of like his whole entire progress, right? Like he when you like find out his backstory of like the fact that he doesn't just have like evil in his veins, like he has both sides. That's why he's constantly warring with himself on what's right and what's wrong. Like he's not like Azula, right? Azula is obviously just pure evil and I love her, but she is my favorite psychopath. Um, but like I think the fact that there's so much that goes into it, it's not just like a, oh, like my father like won't give me my honor back, so I'm just gonna go against him. It was a legitimate internal battle for him, because it went from like it came from like, does he follow his like basically what was taught to him, right? That like the firebenders are like all powerful and like should be ruling, like, right? Like his like nature versus nurture, right? His nurture was all saying that like he had to kill the avatar. But like his nature was pretty much like, you know what your dad's doing is wrong. And he was like constantly at war with himself until he realized that like that thought process wasn't like bad. Like he pretty much always was just like, I don't know why I think like this. I'm just gonna just like ignore it and just keep going for the avatar to
And
destroy my honor.
and so like by the end of it, we think he's pretty solid. He's gone from this evil person to like the good guy. He's now the Fire Lord. Everything's gonna be better. But continuing on to the comics, he still does continuously fight that inner battle. That at some point, I believe that Aang was like, Zuko, I'll do what needs to be done if you continue any further. And I think Zuko, I believe, had Aang promise him that he's like, hey, if I turn back, just do it. And I think he had made that promise with Aang. So even moving forward into the comics, he was man enough and grown up enough to be like, hey, don't let me do this. Because it's like a recovering addict. You never fully recover. The temptation's always still there. It's a daily struggle.
Well,
So
and it's also not just like even like the recovering addict part, right? Like there is basically like the whole thought process of like uh it's like it's kind of like a longish explanation, but like it one humanizes Zuko for me a lot more and like makes it more relatable.
that's a really
Is
good way to put it.
Well, and like the fact that like, so I was always taught that like your first thought, right, when you like say see somebody, right? So say you see someone walking down the street and your first thought is, "Oh my god, why is she wearing that?" But then your second thought is, "Why do I care what she's wearing? That has nothing to do with me." That first thought is something that was taught to you. It was ingrained in your brain. It was not necessarily like your own thought. It was just something that was like taught to you to be like an instinct reaction. That second thought is actually who you are.
Yeah.
But you're always going to be fighting that first thought, right? So like it's it's that whole like people grow, people learn, right? So like you see a lot of people where like they've said bad things in their past and that's not who they are now. Like I can guarantee you I've said some things in my past that I'm like, what the frick was I thinking? Like
I
how? Right, and so it's that like humanizing fact of Zuko that like he has that. He's not perfect. He grew up in a household that basically taught him that killing was a way of life. You just conquer what you want and it is yours.
Yeah.
And like this is just what you do. And then he realized that like you actually think about other people, not just yourself, and you think about like the whole of humanity. And so like that's his second thought. His first thought is the like what he was taught, and his second thought is like no, that's actually wrong. Like why am I thinking this? You know, so like I think that one of the reasons why Zuko for me is such a beloved character, not just because I thought he was hot and like I love him,
And Dante Bob.
but
Come on.
I mean, yeah, and Dante Bosco, but I also like I feel like he has the most, and maybe it's just because he was older and like I related more to that when I was in high school and watching this, but like he had the most relatable like arcs to me, right? Just because you know he went from good or from bad to good to bad to good. Like he didn't just switch. Like he had that struggle within the show and then again within like the comics. Like he never, I don't think he ever really went back to bad, but he realized that like those tendencies still exist. Like those tendencies are still there. They're still gonna exist. And sometimes you don't realize that like that's not something you have to like think of. Like it's just that first thought, but like and so like him realizing that and being able to like look in on himself is also like again that like really relatable character for me.
Relatable content.
I love relatable
Mhm.
content.
So, and I think like along with this journey, I know I've recently done it. Um, is that you get to a point within this journey that he's taken, I know what I've taken, what other people have taken, is that you need some kind of a change. And that's when you decide, you know what, I'm just gonna hack my hair off. That way I'm getting rid of this person that I I I was and I'm creating something new. And hair is a very easy way to do that. And everybody thinks like, oh, he cut his hair and it grew back and he's so sexy because he has hair now. But honestly, I know it's okay. Um,
But I mean, like, you're not wrong because he was kind of ugly with his old hair, but that's.
it's again like, did you look in the mirror this morning? But anyway, so like, and I know I've done it. Is that for 29 years I had nothing but long hair, and I always like pondered the thought of cutting it off. And I finally did it because I was like, you know what, I'm fixing to be 30. If I don't like it, it'll go back. And I did it. Best thing I've ever done. Never going back. And I've kind of decided to turn over a new leaf with it, like to try to be a better person, personally and professionally. Um, Again, it's a daily struggle, but it's more than just cutting your hair off or getting a haircut. It's a fresh start. I know when we made those first cuts and when it was done, it was such a relief. For I'm not. I don't think you've ever cut your hair short, have you?
I have. I had a pixie cut when I moved to Washington
Oh,
3 years ago.
I don't remember this. I'm sorry. But maybe you can concur as well. But it was just very freeing. I felt so free that I didn't have hair to hold me down because it would just stay in a ponytail all day. I got called a guy when I had long hair. I get called a guy when I have short hair. I don't care about that. But it made me enjoy. Like I love my hair now, like so much that I colored it. If you've seen past episodes, I've had really long growth hair. I was waiting to get called back to my original job to finally get it cut and colored as a hurrah. So, but I can do fun things with it now, and I get compliments on my hair like almost daily, and it makes me feel so much better, like so much better. So again, it's not just a haircut, and it's just
Well,
it's a new lease on life.
it's symbolic. Like it's such good symbolism, right? Like
Oh,
it's always
that's a
like
good way to put it.
well, so it's always like a huge joke, like a running joke, especially in like shows, things like that. But in real life too, right? There's like a lot of times, like they'll be like, "Oh, like when a girl goes through a breakup, like she cuts her hair, or she like does something drastic with her hair." But like in all reality, like yeah, we do that. People do that. Guys do that too because it's a symbolic thing for us to be like this period of my life that I have so many memories attached to, or so much like resentment towards or whatever, like that period of my life is over. Like I'm shedding it off. I'm not gonna like do it anymore. this is like a new lease on life for me. Like, so it's a very symbolic gesture because it's something that like I could shave my head right now and I will have hair again. It's not gonna just not grow back for me, you know, because hair is something that grows back. It's not just ever gonna like, well, I mean, like eventually it might just like fall out, but it's one of those things that's like really easy to like symbolize a change, right? And so I think that with Zuko too, like part of that symbolizing that change was like he had that top knight. That was like a very Fire Nation like symbolic, like you saw that and you knew, because that was also where he put his little like prince crown thing, you know, like that's where everything was. And so for him it was symbolizing like shoving off that like past life, his like being evil, and then yeah, I'm gonna be good, and then he went evil again, but that's beside the point. But for him it's definitely very symbolic of like cutting, like it's just like a, we're stopping here, we're starting a new like storyline
Yeah,
basically.
and what the greatest thing about it is that he did not do it alone. He he had his Uncle Iroh right there. He did it too. Uncle Iroh wanted to leave the same life behind, because I know he had a bad reputation, but he was gonna be there for his nephew. So, and then just
Well,
Uncle
and like
Iroh.
Iroh as a whole, like I mean, we everyone loves Iroh. If you don't love Iroh, get out of here. Like I don't even want to have a conversation with you. Like you just need to like,
You need to go
what is
find
wrong?
Jesus.
Like you need to go find your Uncle Iroh, okay?
Yeah,
But I think like with Iroh, like one of my favorite things about him is the fact that like he could have left the Fire Nation at whenever he wanted, right? Like he could have just like pieced out. Like he was already like disgraced, right? Like he, no one really like his like, they were like, like you like left the battle and blah blah blah, like right. So like he could have left whenever, but what he did is he stayed because he saw that like that good in Zuko and was like, I'm not gonna just leave him alone. I'm not just gonna like have him fend for himself while I realize that he's gonna have this struggle, you know? And I think that like besides the fact it's Iroh and he gives like really great advice, and like I just would like a hug from Iroh. Like I think hugs from
I
Iroh would like
need
cure
that.
cancer.
But honestly, like I think as well is that after Iroh lost his son, that he saw that his brother just wasn't being a father to his son. So it's like, let me take this boy under my wing. I I don't know if he made a sense of like I failed the first time, but I need to be there for him because I couldn't be there for my own son. So it's making amends kind of thing and whatnot. But yeah, it's just there's not enough good things to say about Iroh. We could sit here and talk well
I
more
feel
than
like we can have an entire, yeah, we can have like an entire like series about how much we love Iroh and all the things he has done like to help with everything, because it's like with Iroh, like yeah, he's like kind of pretty much considered, like you would consider him like a side character, a supporting character, but like I don't think that like Avatar the Last Airbender would be Avatar the Last Airbender without him.
it. Honestly,
Like
it would not. And Legend of Korra would not be Legend of Korra without Uncle Iroh because he's in there too. But that's for a later date. But just again, just Iroh, he is literally the spiritual backbone of the entire series. He is just kind of like a whisper in the wind the entire time. But if he was not there, this wouldn't have been as a monumental show as it was. Because
oh, 100%.
eventually everybody had their time with Iroh, I believe. I think except for Katara and Sokka, because like Toph had moments with them, so did Aang and everything like that. So just Iroh in whole, he was that spiritual backbone of this show.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So
I feel like I say definitely a lot.
that's okay. Take a
I
shot at
need
that.
an
Cassidy says definitely.
I need a new word. Faux show. I'm gonna start saying faux show.
Perfect.
Okay, moving on because we are definitely running out of
Yeah.
time, but we cannot talk about
Honorable mention.
supporting characters without talking about my favorite little psychopath, Azula.
Yeah.
I think she has the best downward spiral I've seen ever. I think she is a really, really well written like bad guy, because I think a lot of times you end up with a lot of bad guys that they humanize them in a way that they're just like, they're not that bad. They just have bad, like they have a good idea. They're just doing it in a bad way, right? Like Thanos. I agree with like some of what Thanos says. Did he do it properly? No. No, you don't just kill half of the world. You give them supplies, right? So it's like, but like with Azula, she was just batshit crazy. She just wanted to rule everything. She just wanted to be in charge. Like there was no real redeeming quality for her, which makes me love her more.
Yeah.
Like I would venture to say, if you put a gun to my head and said you can only choose one character out of Avatar: The Last Airbender to be your favorite character, I probably would say Azula, 100%. Like, I think because she is so well written to me as a bad guy, bad guy. I don't know what that was, um, but like I think that they wrote her so well as like with like flashbacks, right? With like seeing her as a kid, basically just being like an actual psychopath of it wasn't a nature versus nurture. She was just evil. She was always going to look out for herself. She was always going to want to just like torture animals because that's what psychopaths do. They want to like they just do things like that. But like I think that it was really well written to show that like it wasn't like a progressional thing for her. Yes, she had a progressional downward spiral where she just went crazy because she couldn't get what she wanted. But like I think that she was such a well written bad guy.
Yeah.
I love it.
I fully agree. I know she's not as well as my favorite as she is yours, but I 100% agree with that. And then, so moving on to our last honorable mention here is obviously Suki. Um, Homegirl Suki. Love her to death. She's another one of those badass females kind of thing. So again, we talked about it earlier of basically helping Sokka push him through. But again, being like that character that always shows up to support the group. I mean, she's not always there, but she's like, here I am to support you guys. So um, she's like a helpful cheerleader. I guess you could
Well, too, like, but she also, I mean, she did like, especially with like her interactions with like Sokka, like there is so much that she added from like a background stance, like we said, like with those interactions with Sokka, with being able, like with helping the group and things like that, right? I think that I think that like again, like Ira, like the Avatar: Last Airbender would not have been the same without Suki,
say.
and we could have seen this if the movie that shall not be named went forward because they didn't include our Kyoshi warriors in it. But again, like think about that, right? So if Sokka never had an interaction with the Kyoshi warriors, never had this interaction with Suki going, you're kind of a dick and sexist,
Mm-hmm.
you know, where would he have been? Like he probably still would have been a dick and sexist.
Yeah, and then not with just with Suki, but it also introduced us. She introduced us to Kyoshi Wars because Avatar Kyoshi would not have played a pivotal point in Aang's decision making that all of that he had to make by looking back on these past avatars. But Suki and her people then, kind of told the story of Avatar Kyoshi, where then Aang could think, go back and have that connection with his past avatar. So not only was she there for Sokka, she was inadvertently there for Aang as well, for just kind of telling Avatar Kyoshi's story and introducing the Kyoshi warriors and a helpful tool that if the gang would ever need one, the Kyoshi warriors were always there.
Oh yeah, definitely. Damn it. I said it again. I said it again.
Okay, on that note, so Cassidy doesn't say definitely again. It looks like we are out of time. So all of our honorable mentions, all of our characters. Who's your favorite character from Avatar: The Last Airbender? We're gonna stick with Avatar: The Last Airbender. Who's your favorite? Let us know down below, or just kind of keep it to yourself. That's fine. We hope you.
Keep it to yourself. Have conversations with us.
Listen, none of the other episodes have gotten any comments, so that's okay. That's
That's
okay.
fair.
I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But yeah, so that was our character rundown for Avatar: The Last Airbender, our main gang. and then obviously our main supporting characters. So, any other thoughts?
I mean, no, because if we start talking again, it'll go on for like another hour.
That's
And
fair.
it's only supposed to be like hour at most.
There you go. All right. Well, with that note, again, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the fun stuff, and we'll see you next week. And just remember, my name's Miranda.
And I'm Cassidy, and we're nerds, and you gotta deal with it. You almost went on it. I saw you about to start, and I was like, ah.